Let's go to New York now. Sherwin Bryce-Pease is standing by. Sherwin, you've been there since the morning, since the voting stations opened this morning. What's the latest that you have for us?
Oliver, a steady clip of voters here in New York. Certainly not the lines and queues we're seeing in places like The Hague and in London. But I can tell you that there has been a steady flow of voters at this voting station in Manhattan at the South African Consulate here. They might not come in all at once, but they certainly haven't given the electoral officials that are manning the tables, making sure that they are registered, making sure that they are on the voters' roll, haven't really given them a break. But to find out more about what's going on here, let's speak to Pumeza Albert. She's the Special Voting Officer for the Independent Electoral Commission. Pumeza, welcome back to SABC News. How's the process unfolding for you this morning?
Oh, wow. It's unfolding very good. People are excited. All the South African citizens who come through so far, they're very excited. They're very jubilant. They are very much welcoming. They appreciate even the smallest things like the accent that we don't, you'll take for granted. It's like, oh, wow, I'm so happy to actually hear the accent. And some of them are the first-time voters. We take them through the process, as explained also very thoroughly to us by the IEC through our training, which things are going quite well in New York. We don't have so much lines, but as and when people come through, we assist them very much efficiently through the processes that are put in place.
It's certainly been a very smooth process. People certainly don't have to wait long to cast their ballots. We've had about around 250 voters in New York, about 250 in Washington, D.C. The numbers from Los Angeles, around 97. What's your message to eligible voters who haven't come through yet in New York?
We are pleading with them. We are saying to the New Yorkers who are South African citizens who are here in New York, if you've got friends from South Africa who know that they've got friends here in New York, please request for them to come through. We still got a huge number to go. It's about 1,500 voters more to go right now. If they can come through and finish up quite early, for us it will be great. If we can close the ballot, the voting polls quite early for us, it will be great. So we are pleading to the South Africans who know they've got friends in New York or family in New York to please come through to the consulate, and then let's do this.
I also listened to some of the discussions that you were having with some of the voters. The two envelopes issue keeps coming up, right? The first envelope that goes into envelope A and into envelope B. Talk about the discussions you've been having with voters regarding that.
Okay, so with the envelopes, what they're mostly worried about is where is it quite secretive then if we have to place our names and our IDs on the envelope B. So what we do, we explain to them how it was also explained to us is that the counting process doesn't happen in the mission. However, it will be collected by a specialist, the DH specialist to come through and collect the ballots, the voting material once it's done, and then the counting will commence in Tshwane, not here, whereby the two envelopes will be delinked from each other. It's just more of a completeness from the list that we have received from IEC and then the number of people that voted within this mission. It's just for completeness, but then when the counting happens, it will count only the envelope A and not the B where the names are attached.
So final word for you, so to make the point is your vote is still a secret.
It is very much a secret. It's very much a secret, yes.
Pumeza, good to see you. Pumeza Albert, the Special Voting Officer here at the mission in New York, and of course voting continuing, Oliver, until 9 p.m. local time, 9 p.m. Eastern time, and of course in Los Angeles until 7 p.m. Pacific time.
Yeah. Sherwin, we see on social media some people taking issue with the fact that people who've been living abroad for so long get to have a say in the electoral outcomes of the country, saying that they don't have a deep understanding of the issues that South Africans are facing, given that they haven't been in the milieu of things. What are the senses? What sense of understanding do you get from South African voters abroad, especially those that have been living in the US and surrounding countries for quite a while?
I mean, it's a fair point. I've spoken to someone that has lived outside South Africa for 25 years. Someone told me he lives in Boston for the past 5 years. But with the advances in communication and technology, people are very engaged. People have families there. Families like to talk about issues, particularly if there are problems in the country. They talk about things like load shedding. They talk about things like corruption. They talk about the NHI, right? The bill that was signed by President Ramaphosa. A lot of people having concerns about the implementation and whether it's going to work. So people are still very, very much engaged. And what you also have in a place like New York is a lot of South African students who are studying abroad. And so I engaged with Professor Sean Jacobs of the New School, Professor of International Affairs at the New School University here in New York, and asked him about whether the youth of the young voters, the born-frees of South Africa, are as engaged in the electoral process as perhaps older people, right, that have longer allegiances with some of the more established parties in South Africa. This was part of that conversation. Watch.
If you look at the last decade, I think 2015, 2017, up until that point, people thought these are the born-frees, they don't care about politics. You know, they just want to party now, they're free. And it turns out they actually had a profound sense of where they were in South Africa. They challenged the agreements of the early 90s. They challenged patriarchy. They challenged the way the universities, the knowledge production work. So I actually have a more optimistic view about, not necessarily, people may have questions about the ability of the South African government or the ANC to deliver to citizens. I think I have more faith in South Africans as like political agents to try to determine their own future. South Africans have an ability to say, look, we've had enough of, at that point, Jacob Zuma, and they got rid of him. Before that, Thabo Mbeki's AIDS policies, people weren't happy with that. Eventually, the ANC also dumped Thabo Mbeki. So there's something about the South African spirit that I like, that South Africans, they're not complacent about democracy. They want democracy to work for them.
And also a very interesting point to observe, Oliver, is that people have come from all sorts of places to vote here in New York. They've come from Springfield, Illinois, from Boston, which is sort of up the coast from here. They've flown in from the Dominican Republic, from the British Virgin Islands. So certainly an acute awareness from people that have come to vote about the issues back in South Africa. They feel attached to South Africa. Many told us that they might be out here for certain opportunities, but the intention is to return home at some point. So let's not discount people that have moved out of the country. They're still very much invested in the future and the future success of South Africa, the Republic.
Sherwin, thank you so much for your time this evening. Really do appreciate it. We continue observing elections coverage as well as some of the voter turnout at the various stations. Like you heard there, voting in Los Angeles will be continuing until much later this evening.